Welcome back. The purpose of this video is to assist you in reviewing the model building hints. It's important that you understand what's required going forward because you will be earning 20 points on each problem from here on out. So make sure that you take the time to watch this video at least once, and you may want to refer to it going forward almost as a checkoff list to make sure that you've considered all the things you need to consider when building these models from scratch. So I like to refer to this section of the course as it's time to take off the training wheels, or time to lose the training wheels. From this point in the class so far, you've been working with pre-programmed templates where the author, me in this case, has started the templates and you've been asked to finish them. So you haven't really had to worry a whole lot about appearance. You haven't had to worry about how to set up the template because a lot of that's been done for you. But now just as a youngster learns to ride a bike without the training wheels, that's kind of the analogy that I look at when moving into this section of the course. So you've been riding the bike with the training wheels on, and now it's time to ride on your own. So I believe this is a critical point in our journey. We're about halfway through the course, and this is the time where you get to be the creator of the canvas. So you will be looking at a blank canvas when you start most of these problems, and we're going to keep moving forward in the class. So model building hints, there's keys to success, and I can't emphasize it enough. Take the time to plan it out. Some people would say that you look at the end result, what you would like the end result to look like, and then work backwards from there. So make sure you document your work, and that means for every template you submit, I will be looking first and foremost for your name, a file name, and the purpose or description clearly listed on each document. When I pick a document up or when I look at your file, it should stand on its own. I shouldn't have to sit there and wonder what the purpose of this file is. In place of that, you're actually going to document that. I'll show you an example shortly. Make sure that all the relevant data for the company is included in your template. When a template lends itself well to a data section, answer section type format, make sure you clearly label those parts of your worksheet. You want to clearly identify the data section where the user should be entering their information, and the answer section, when planned out purposefully and mindfully, will recreate itself on its own. In other words, if the user changes the data section, a 100% flexible template will recompute the answer section on its own. Also, completeness counts. Make sure you answer all parts of the problem. Many of you have lost points on previous assignments because you didn't complete it. You didn't answer all parts of the question. So let's move forward and make sure that before we submit that one final file, you've taken the time to make sure, almost as a checkoff list, that you've remembered to do all parts of the problem. Appearance counts. Use all the features you learned about in the lessons in the book. The book that we've been using has not been called the Quick Book, but it's similar to a book that we used to use. So the step-by-step book gave us 5 lessons or so with very detailed instructions on how to use most of the features. So, for example, experiment with different fonts and formats. Use bolds and italics when appropriate. Use borders to your advantage. Every line on a spreadsheet should be labeled. All columns should have headings. All totals should be clearly labeled. Use appropriate and consistent formats throughout your template, and I want to emphasize that to you. Here's a pet peeve of mine. When I get a template, make sure that the formats are consistent. For example, if your template deals with dollars and cents, then all numbers should have 2 decimal places. I shouldn't have a template where some numbers have 0 decimals, some have 1, some have 2. So be consistent in your use of formats. Small things you do will add value and points to your template. From now on, you need to earn your points. In the past, problems started with 20 points and I deducted for the mistakes that you made. Now you're going to be starting with 0 points because you're starting with a blank screen, and you'll work your way up to 20. Accuracy. Don't be so concerned about the appearance that you sacrifice the accuracy of your template. All work that you do should use sound accounting concepts, and everything should be done in accordance with GAAP. And flexibility is key. I will be heavily looking at your templates and how flexible they are. So that's why that first bullet point says flexibility will be heavily graded. Templates should be able to be used repetitively with any changes isolated to the data section whenever possible. So again, use the data section and answer section when appropriate. Also, as you know, charts are a big part of all that we do in business, and the higher up you go in management, the more you're going to find that management wants to see things, see data sets represented pictorially or in a chart as opposed to raw data. So as always, make sure you have a 3-part title: who, what, and when, just like we do on a set of financial statements. Make your chart the best it can be. Consider using data labels whenever possible. If you still aren't comfortable preparing charts, consider going back and reviewing the lesson on charts in the step-by-step book. I'm going to give you an example of a template momentarily where we're going to go in and put some of these features to use. This problem, let's just assume that I'm looking for a projected quarterly income statement. In other words, let's assume that we have a fictitious company where we're given some data. Here you see that in the data section, and we're asked to do an estimated income statement for the first quarter of the year. So some things I want to point out to you that I've already done on this template prior to starting the video is I'm going to be looking for documentation. In other words, do you have your name? Do you have a file name so that if somebody wanted to go locate this file on your USB drive, they would know where to look? And do you have a brief description or template that explains what this model is doing? Again, this should stand on its own. I shouldn't have to pull this template up and wonder what's the purpose of this problem. In my data, I have a data section and an answer section. I'm going to set those two apart because they're important. The data section is where the items that will change should be made, and the answer section is where the data should recompute on its own. Now I realize that on all financial statements we should have a proper heading with who, what, when. In other words, I know that I need to put the name of the company and the name of the financial statement and a period or period of time. But in the interest of time on this video, I'm going to focus on some more important things. So for that reason, I've left the 3-part heading off on this. So here I have 4 components in the data section that I expect to possibly change. And down here in the answer section, my goal is to make sure that this 100% computes on its own. So I've set up some months here. And again, this isn't centered. I'll do that at the end. I tend to center information on my spreadsheet at the very end because I'm never quite sure exactly how wide my template's going to be until I create it. So even if I wanted to go back and enter the who, what, when right around this area, of course I can do that later. So January sales, I'm going to cell reference that. Rather than type in $100,000, I want to cell reference the data section so that if any changes appear in the data section, the answer section will automatically recompute. So rather than typing in 100,000, I'm going to cell reference it by typing in equals and grabbing the 100% and pressing, or the 100,000 and pressing enter. My February sales is going to grow at the rate of 5%. So again, I want to make a formula that's going to use the data here. In other words, I do not want to enter here 100,000 times 5% or 105%, because if I do that and management changes their mind and changes this to 6 or 7%, I'm going to be stuck down here if I type in 5%. So once again, we want to use cell references. So I'm going to say that I want the January sales to increase by 1 plus the growth rate, cell referenced. And when I enter that, I see that I have 105,000. Now notice these formats are inconsistent. I will fix that later, but just notice that that's part of the appearance issues that we talked about earlier in the slide presentation. So now that I have that, I can drag it over here to March, and it should go up another 5% if I do this properly. And I may just want to do another cell reference there that's going to take that cell times 1 plus the growth rate again, and press enter. And let's see, I'm going to troubleshoot my cell. Here it is. I have a equals instead of a times, so let me go up to the formula bar and fix that, and need to start that again. So 105,000 times 1 plus the growth rate. There we go, that looks better. And then the quarter to date, I'm going to sum it up. So you can use the auto sum feature, or you can type it in, whatever you prefer. There's many different ways to do that. But there I have my projected sales for the quarter. Okay, moving on, my selling expenses are 40% of the sales. So again, I'm going to take 40% times the sales number, and when I press enter, I have 40,000. Let's see what happens when I copy that across. And if I go troubleshoot this, it looks like it took I-10, which I didn't want it to do. So let me change that formula to be February times the 5%. And here I'm going to do March sales times the 5%. In other words, everything is cell referenced so that if anything changes here, it will automatically change down here as well. So again, I'm going to auto sum that information and press enter. General and administrative expenses are a flat 25,000. So rather than type in 25,000, again, I want to cell reference it. And in case you've forgotten how to use the absolute reference, remember, if you don't want that cell to change as you copy it across, you can use an absolute reference, which you can put in there by pressing the F4 key. So I'm going to press my F4 key, and when I did that, it automatically put dollar signs in the cell reference. That's so that when I copy it across here in a moment, that cell reference will not change. Instead, the same exact cell reference will be copied across. And once again, I'm going to use my auto sum. And there we go. So total expenses. I'm going to put some lines in. That's part of the appearance, making sure that you use underlines where necessary. And I'm going to sum this up. And once I get those first two summed up, I can just drag it across. Okay, on the net income, since I'm going to be doing a calculation, I'm going to have another single underline, just like I did before. And we know that when we are done with the financial statement, net income is going to be my bottom line. I'm going to want to put some double underlines. Here we go. And then of course I'm going to compute my net income by taking the revenues minus the expenses. And once I have that, I will copy it across. I'll auto sum this. And here you have a projection of an income statement. Now again, doesn't look perfect. Right now I see some inconsistent formats. So you want to format these to be all the same as far as the numbers go. You can choose the type that you want. I think I'm going to choose accounting, but I don't want dollar signs on every line item. So to fix that, and in fact I don't need decimals either. So let me get rid of the decimals by taking those off. And I don't want dollar signs on every number. So go choose the accounting format if that's what you're choosing. And if you want to take the dollar sign off, you'll choose none. And then you can go in on the lines where you want the dollar sign and change the format that way. So I want a dollar sign on the first line item, and I want a dollar sign on the last line item. Dollar signs do not belong on every line item. Okay, now once I have that template set up, I can work on making it look a little nicer. One of the ways you might consider doing that is by using shading. So for example, if I had a long income statement and I wanted to shade every other line, I could highlight this. I could choose a color, remembering that we don't have color printers, most of us, or the labs don't have color printers. So maybe choose a shade of gray. And once you have that shade down, you can double click. You guys can't see me double clicking, but I'm going to double click the format painter here. And then every line that you touch will copy the formatting from one line to the next. Okay, so that's just an example. And here I see some dollar signs that got added that I don't want. So again, it's kind of a live and learn as far as figuring out what looks best. Right now I want to go get rid of those dollar signs, so I'm going to do that real quick before I do anything else. Okay, again, appearance matters, so find things that can help you out in appearance. So if I'm ready to go enter my three-part heading now, then I can insert some rows. You guys should know how to do all of this from the lessons that we learned at the beginning. I can put my who, what, when. So let's do Johnson Consulting. This is an income projection. I can write for the quarter ended. And I'm going to go ahead and type in March 31st. Later on, you'll learn a technique where we can have the computer change that for us, but right now that's kind of above the scope of what we're doing. And of course, this needs to be centered. I would strongly encourage you not to use the merge and center. It works only one line at a time, and it ties our hands on what types of other formatting we can use later. So rather, I'm going to highlight this over the area. I want to center it over. I'm going to break out that alignment box. I'm going to choose the horizontal alignment and choose center across selection. Press OK, and in a few seconds it's centered. I know that appearance matters, so I'm going to do my best to make my work the best it can be. I've also seen students, for example, blacken the title if they like that. You can make it black. Did I do it? Let's see. You could make the area black and choose white lettering. So there's just lots of different ways you can do it. So again, just kind of to wrap this up, from now on you're going to be creating your models from scratch. So you have a lot more flexibility in your work. Your work should not look like your classmates' work because everybody's submitting different templates. Here I just noticed that my months got thrown off the top there when I put that heading in, so let me move them. So again, this isn't perfect. I can go back in here and I can do some work with centering some of these items. I strongly encourage you to use the print preview button and see what your work looks like before you print it out. Here you can see that I have more space on the right hand side than I do on the left hand side. So you've learned techniques for making that the best it can be. You can try the page setup, and I believe it's under the margins heading here. I can tell the computer to horizontally center this, and again preview it, and that time it puts it right smack dab in the center, and my template's starting to take shape. So it's not perfect. I still have some more things I can do. However, don't be afraid to experiment around. Remember to run a spell check to make sure there aren't any items misspelled. Remember to make sure that your work fits on one page if at all possible. Remember to give your tabs meaningful labels. Remember that all columns should have items on them, that all line items should be described, that heading should be centered. Whenever possible, any changes that take place should be in the data section. In another lesson, you'll learn how we can put a date up here in the data section and then work on changing it down in the answer section, but that's for another lecture. So anyways, just wanted to give you a little overview of what's expected, and as always, I'm here to help. Just reach out. I'm so proud of you guys for hanging in there for 9 weeks. We're halfway through the semester, and I'm looking forward to the second part of the class where you can be the artist and start bringing life to your canvases. Until next time, see you soon.